Commander James Miller stood at his usual post in the Galactic Council Station's observation deck, watching the swirling colors of deep space through the reinforced windows. At 42 years old, with graying temples and weathered features, he had seen his fair share of unusual things since becoming Earth's military attaché. But today promised to be different. The station's warning systems chimed softly as a sleek, pearl-white vessel emerged from faster-than-light travel. Its organic curves and flowing lines marked it as a ship of the Stellar Empire, the most advanced civilization in the known galaxy. James straightened his dark blue uniform, knowing that this arrival would change everything. "Attention all personnel," the station's AI announced. "Royal Vessel Starlight Pearl requesting docking clearance. All honor guards to their positions." James took his place near the main airlock, standing alongside representatives from 20 other species. He couldn't help but notice how different they all were. Some floating in anti-gravity fields, others supported by mechanical aids to cope with the station's artificial gravity. Humans, coming from a high-gravity world with extreme weather patterns, were among the few who could walk naturally in most environments. The airlock cycled, releasing a light mist of sterilizing vapor. As the doors opened, 6 royal guards entered first. They were tall and graceful, with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer under the station's lights. Their ceremonial armor looked beautiful but fragile to James's experienced eyes. Then she appeared. Princess Lyra of the Stellar Empire walked through the airlock with the fluid grace of a dancer. She stood nearly 7 feet tall, her skin a deeper blue than her guards, with luminescent patterns flowing across her face and hands. Her eyes, large and silver, swept across the gathering before fixing on James with obvious curiosity. "Welcome, Your Highness," the station's administrator, a gelatinous being floating in a containment field, burbled respectfully. "We are honored by your presence." The princess's translator, Crystal, hummed softly as she spoke. "The honor is mine. I look forward to learning more about all your species." Her gaze returned to James, particularly our newest members. James bowed precisely as his diplomatic training had taught him. "Earth welcomes the chance to strengthen our bonds with the Stellar Empire, Your Highness." Something in his voice or manner made her step closer, head tilting slightly. "You're the first human I've met in person. Your species is quite fascinating." She gestured to one of her guards, who brought forward a data crystal. "I've read the reports about your world. Such harsh conditions, extreme temperature variations, high gravity, dangerous wildlife, natural disasters. How do you survive?" "We adapt, Your Highness," James replied simply. "It's what humans do best." A small smile curved her lips. "Indeed. The reports also mention your physical capabilities. They say a human can continue functioning with broken bones, survive losing significant amounts of blood, and heal from injuries that would kill most species." The other diplomats shifted uncomfortably. To them, humans were death-worlders, fascinating but slightly frightening. James was used to these reactions by now. "We're not as fragile as we look," he said diplomatically. "Though we admire the Stellar Empire's achievements in technology and art." The princess's skin patterns flickered with interest. "Perhaps we can learn from each other, Commander Miller. I'll be staying on the station for several months during the trade negotiations. I hope we'll have many chances to discuss our differences." James nodded politely, but something in her tone made him wonder if there was more to her interest than simple diplomacy. The Empire was known for its complex political games, and he had a feeling he had just become a piece on their board. As the welcoming ceremony continued and the princess moved on to greet other diplomats, James caught her glancing back at him several times. He'd been trained to handle diplomatic challenges, but something told him that dealing with Princess Lyra would test all his skills, and maybe teach him a few things about his own species in the process. The game had begun. He just didn't know the rules yet. The station's training facility was empty at this early hour, just as James preferred it. He had started his morning routine as usual: weights, cardio, and combat practice. The artificial gravity was set slightly higher than Earth standard, exactly how he liked it. A rhythmic thud echoed through the room as he worked the heavy bag, each punch precise and controlled. Sweat darkened his gray tank top, but his breathing remained steady. After 20 years in the military, this was as natural as walking. He didn't notice his audience until he heard a soft gasp. Princess Lyra stood in the doorway with two of her guards, her silver eyes wide with what looked like concern. The flowing patterns on her skin were moving faster than usual. "Your Highness," James said, stepping back from the bag and giving a small bow. "I apologize for my informal appearance." "You're hurting yourself," she said, moving closer. Her translator crystal struggled to keep up with her quickened speech. "Your skin is leaking fluid, and you're striking that object repeatedly. Are you unwell?" James couldn't help but smile. "This is normal exercise for humans, Your Highness. The leaking fluid is sweat. It helps us regulate our body temperature. And the striking practice keeps us sharp." The princess circled him slowly, her tall frame moving with characteristic grace. "Fascinating. In our culture, any form of physical stress is considered harmful. We use neural stimulation and anti-gravity chambers for fitness." One of her guards whispered something, and she nodded. "Commander, would you demonstrate your species' capabilities? I've heard humans can lift more than twice their body weight." James glanced at the weight section. "If you wish, Your Highness. Though I should warn you, what looks dangerous to your people is perfectly safe for humans." He moved to the bench press, loading it with plates. The princess and her guards watched with a mixture of horror and fascination as he positioned himself and began a set of repetitions. To them, the mere idea of voluntarily straining against heavy weights was alien. "Remarkable." Lyra breathed. "Your muscles. They're expanding and contracting. And you're not in pain." "Not at all," James replied between controlled breaths. "This is how we grow stronger. Among my people, strength comes from the mind, from technological advancement." She moved closer, her scent like distant flowers. "May I?" Before James could react, she reached out and touched his arm. Instantly, her skin patterns flared bright blue, and she jerked back with a small cry. The guards rushed forward, but she waved them away. "I'm fine. I wasn't prepared. Your life force is so intense." James sat up quickly, concerned. "I apologize, Your Highness. I should have warned you that humans have higher body temperature and electrical activity than most species." No, she said, her pattern slowly returning to normal. "It was my error. I forgot that humans have different protocols about physical contact." She looked at him with new interest. "You're like a star, burning bright and hot, contained in flesh. How do you keep such power under control?" "Discipline," James answered simply. "Like right now, I'm restraining myself from asking why the Princess of the Stellar Empire is visiting the station gym at 500 hours. Lyra's patterns shifted to what James was learning to recognize as amusement. "Perhaps I was curious about Earth's military attaché. Perhaps I wanted to see if the stories about humans were true." She paused. "Or perhaps I just couldn't sleep, knowing such an interesting specimen was nearby." Warning bells rang in James's diplomatic mind. This wasn't just scientific curiosity. There was something more in her voice, her manner. "Your Highness," he said carefully, "while I'm honored by your interest, I should remind you that I'm here as Earth's representative." "Of course," she replied, her smile mysterious. "For now. But tell me, Commander, what do humans do when duty conflicts with curiosity?" Before he could answer, she turned and glided away, her guards following. At the door, she looked back. "I'll see you at tonight's diplomatic dinner. Perhaps we can continue our cultural exchange." James watched her leave, suddenly very aware that he might be getting into something far more complex than simple diplomacy. The princess was playing a game. He just wasn't sure if he was a player or a piece. The diplomatic dinner buzzed with the sounds of 20 different species trying to eat politely. The station's grand hall had been transformed for the evening, with floating light crystals casting a soft glow over the gathered dignitaries. James sat at his assigned place, carefully navigating the various alien dishes with his usual military precision. Princess Lyra sat at the head of the table, her formal attire making her seem to glow from within. The patterns on her skin shifted in slow, mesmerizing waves, and her silver eyes kept finding their way to James throughout the meal. "Commander Miller," she called out suddenly, her voice cutting through the general conversation. "I trust you've recovered from your morning exercise." Every eye and sensory organ in the room turned toward James. He kept his face neutral, years of diplomatic training kicking in. "Yes, Your Highness. Though I hope I didn't alarm you too greatly." "On the contrary," she said, her translator crystal giving her voice an almost musical quality. "I found it most enlightening. In fact, it helped me make an important decision." The station's administrator, still floating in their containment field, rippled with interest. "A decision, Your Highness." Lyra stood, her height impressive even among the varied species present. "Yes. As you all know, the Stellar Empire is considering a deeper alliance with Earth. But how can we trust a species we don't truly understand?" She turned her silver gaze directly to James. "That is why I have decided. Tonight, Commander Miller will sleep beside me." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the station's ambient hum seemed to pause. James carefully set down his eating utensils. "Your Highness, I'm not sure I understand." "It's quite simple," Lyra continued, her skin patterns now pulsing with determination. "In my culture, sharing sleep space is the deepest form of diplomatic trust building. We are touch telepaths during our rest cycle. It allows for complete understanding between species." The other diplomats burst into excited chatter. The station administrator's containment field rippled with distress. "Your Highness, surely there are other ways. Are you refusing my request, Commander?" Lyra asked, ignoring the others. Her eyes locked onto James with an intensity that made the room seem to shrink. James stood slowly, his mind racing through diplomatic protocols. "Your Highness, in human culture, sharing sleep space has different implications, very intimate implications." "Ah, yes." Lyra's patterns flickered with what might have been amusement. "Your species' strange obsession with mating rituals. I assure you, this is purely diplomatic. Unless," her patterns shifted to a deeper blue. "Are you afraid, Commander? Does the mighty human fear such close contact with my kind?" James recognized the challenge in her voice. She was deliberately provoking him, using human pride as leverage. The question was, why? "Fear isn't the issue, Your Highness," he said carefully. "But as Earth's representative, I must consider the diplomatic implications of such an unusual request." "Diplomatic implications." Lyra's voice carried a hint of steel now. "I am offering the highest honor my people can bestow. We share sleep only with those we trust completely. Or does Earth not value the Empire's trust?" The political trap snapped shut with an almost audible click. If he refused, he risked insulting not just the princess, but the entire Stellar Empire. If he accepted, well, that could lead anywhere. "I would need to consult with my superiors," James said, buying time. "Of course," Lyra replied, her patterns now showing clear triumph. "You have 1 hour to decide. Remember, Commander, tonight could shape the future relationship between our peoples." She turned to address the whole room. "Until then, shall we continue with dessert?" The conversation gradually resumed, but James barely noticed. His mind was already racing through scenarios, trying to understand the princess's true motives. Was this really about diplomatic trust, or was she playing a deeper game? One thing was certain, this dinner had just become the most important meal of his career. And somewhere in the station, he knew Earth's diplomatic corps was about to have a collective panic attack. Absolutely not. Ambassador Roberts' hologram flickered with static, his face red with stress. "Commander, you cannot share sleeping quarters with the princess of the Stellar Empire." James stood in the secure communications room, surrounded by the floating images of Earth's emergency diplomatic council. The room's privacy fields hummed at maximum strength, ensuring no alien technology could listen in. "With all due respect, sir," James replied, "refusing her might be worse. The Empire takes these trust rituals very seriously." "He's right," said Director Chen, her hologram looking tired. "Our cultural experts are going crazy over this. The Empire's sleep-sharing ceremony is like a combination of a peace treaty and a blood oath to them. Refusing would be like spitting in their face." Another hologram, General Martinez, leaned forward. "But what if it's a trap? The princess could be trying to gather intelligence while we sleep. Their touch telepathy is still not fully understood." James shook his head. "I don't think that's it. Sir, she's been studying me since she arrived, watching how humans operate. I think she's genuinely curious about our species. Curious enough to risk an interstellar incident." Ambassador Roberts snorted. "Commander, she's the heir to the most powerful empire in known space. Everything she does is political." A new hologram flickered to life. Dr. Wilson, Earth's leading genopsychologist. "Actually, that might be exactly why she's doing this. Think about it. The Empire's nobility is obsessed with strength. Their entire culture revolves around proving their superiority. Then along come humans, from a death world no less, showing physical capabilities that seem impossible to them." "So this is some kind of test?" James asked. "More like an investigation." Dr. Wilson continued. "Sources indicate the princess has political rivals who think she's too soft on lesser species. By understanding humans directly, she could strengthen her position and our alliance at the same time." Director Chen's hologram nodded. "Our spies report increased activity in the anti-human factions of the Empire's court. They're calling us unstable brutes who can't be trusted. This could be the princess's way of proving them wrong. Or proving them right," General Martinez growled. "What happens if the commander snores, or talks in his sleep? Or—" "I don't snore, sir," James interrupted dryly. "This isn't a joke, Commander." Ambassador Roberts shouted. "The future of Earth-Empire relations could depend on how you sleep." James took a deep breath. "Then maybe we should focus on making sure I don't mess it up. Dr. Wilson, what do we know about their sleep-sharing customs?" The xenopsychologist's hologram brightened. "They lie completely still, entering a meditative state. Their touch telepathy is passive during sleep. They receive impressions but can't actively read minds. They're most impressed by those who show mental discipline and emotional control, which is why she chose you." Director Chen said thoughtfully, "Your psychological evaluations show exceptional mental discipline. Maybe she did her homework better than we thought." A soft chime indicated their time was running short. James straightened his uniform. "I need your decision, sirs, ma'am. The princess is waiting." The holograms looked at each other. Finally, Ambassador Roberts sighed. "We don't have a choice, do we? Commander Miller, you are hereby ordered to sleep with the princess." He winced at his own words. "But remember, the fate of Earth's diplomatic relations rests on your behavior tonight." "No pressure," General Martinez added with a grim smile. As the holograms faded, James allowed himself a small sigh. He'd faced combat situations that felt less stressful than this diplomatic nightmare. Still, something about the whole situation nagged at him. The princess was clever, too clever to risk such an unusual request without a very good reason. What game was she really playing? And more importantly, what would happen when he closed his eyes beside one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy? He had less than 30 minutes to prepare himself for the strangest diplomatic mission of his career. The Royal Suite's antechamber felt more like a garden than a room on a space station. Living crystals grew from the walls, casting soft, multicolored light across floating plants. James stood near the entrance, still in his formal uniform, waiting for the princess. When Lyra entered, she had dismissed her guards, the first surprise of the evening. She wore simpler robes now, though her skin patterns still danced with complex emotions he couldn't read. "Your people have agreed, then?" she asked, moving closer. "Yes, Your Highness," James replied. "Though I admit, there's still much about this situation I don't understand." Lyra's patterns shifted to a deeper blue. "Then ask, Commander. We have some time before the sleep cycle begins." She gestured to a cluster of cushions floating at comfortable heights. "Please, sit with me." As they settled into the cushions, James noticed she kept a careful distance, unusual for someone who had demanded to sleep beside him. "Why me?" he asked directly. "There are other human diplomats with more experience." "But none with your particular combination of qualities," she replied. Her translator crystal hummed softly. "You're a warrior who serves as a diplomat. Strong, yet controlled. Dangerous, yet gentle. You fascinate me. I'm just a soldier who learned to navigate politics, Your Highness." "Please," she said softly, "call me Lyra. At least here, before we share sleep space." Her patterns rippled. "You see, Commander, my people are dying." The statement hung in the air between them. James stayed silent, waiting for her to continue. "Not physically," she clarified, "but culturally. We've become so dependent on our technology, so afraid of physical contact, so removed from the raw essence of life. Then we discovered humans." Her silver eyes fixed on him. "You're everything we used to be, everything we've lost. Strong, resilient, able to touch, to feel, to endure. You could have learned that from our cultural databases," James pointed out. "Data isn't truth," Lyra countered. "I need to understand, really understand, how your species thinks, how you feel, how you can be so physically powerful yet choose peace, how you control such strength." She paused. "My opponents in the royal courts say humans are too dangerous to trust, that your very nature makes you a threat. And you disagree? I believe your strength could be our salvation." Her pattern swirled faster. "During sleep sharing, we experience each other's deepest nature. No lies, no diplomatic masks, just truth." James leaned forward slightly. "And if you don't like what you find, then at least I'll know," she said simply. "But I don't think that will happen. I've watched you, James, the way you hold yourself back, the care you take with those weaker than you. It's admirable." "You're taking a big risk," he said. "Sleep sharing with a Deathworlder. Your opponents could use that against you." Lyra's patterns flashed with something like amusement, or it could silence them forever. What better way to prove humans can be trusted than to share sleep with one? "Either I prove my point about human nature, or," she shrugged elegantly, "or I prove them right and destroy Earth's chances at an alliance." James finished. "Do you plan to harm me in my sleep, Commander?" "Of course not." "Then trust yourself as I'm trusting you." She stood gracefully. "The sleep chamber is prepared. Are you ready?" James stood as well, finally understanding. This wasn't just about diplomacy or cultural exchange. This was about evolution. The empires and humanities. Two species at a crossroads, each holding something the other needed. "One last question," he said. "What happens if this works? If you find what you're looking for?" Lyra's patterns shifted to colors he'd never seen before. "Then, Commander, we begin changing the galaxy together." She moved toward the inner chamber. "Shall we?" Taking a deep breath, James followed her. Whatever happened next would change everything. For him, for Earth, and for the Empire. He just hoped he could sleep through it. The sleep chamber looked nothing like James had expected. Instead of a bed, the center of the room held what appeared to be a shallow pool of softly glowing liquid, surrounded by more of the living crystals he'd seen in the antechamber. "This is our traditional sleep-sharing basin," Lyra explained, noticing his hesitation. "The fluid helps conduct our telepathic energies." James studied the glowing pool with military precision. "Your Highness, Lyra, I need to suggest an alternative." Her patterns flickered with surprise. "You're not refusing?" "No," he said carefully, But I think I understand what you're really looking for, and there might be a better way to achieve it. He gestured to the pool. That liquid, it would put me at a disadvantage. Humans aren't natural swimmers, and being vulnerable in liquid goes against every survival instinct we have. Lyra's patterns shifted to a curious blue. Go on. On Earth, we have something called meditation chambers, places where minds can meet without the need for physical vulnerability. He met her silver eyes. You want to understand humans. Let's start with how we build trust. The princess moved closer, her tall frame casting interesting shadows in the crystal light. Explain. Instead of sleep sharing, I propose we spend the night in mindful meditation. Awake, aware, but in a state of complete openness. He smiled slightly. Your people value mental discipline. Well, this is how humans develop it. But without the sleep-sharing fluid, how will I sense your true nature? Lyra asked, though her pattern suggested she was intrigued. You can still touch my hand or arm, James offered. But we'll both be conscious, both in control. Equal. The princess was quiet for a long moment, her pattern swirling in complex patterns. Finally, she spoke. You're very clever, Commander. You found a way to honor my request while maintaining your species' dignity. And mine. She waved her hand, and the glowing pool slowly drained away, revealing a smooth floor beneath. The basin can be converted to a meditation space, she said. But tell me, how do humans prepare for such spiritual communion? James removed his boots and uniform jacket, leaving him in his basic black undershirt and pants. We get comfortable, but remain respectful. We focus on our breathing. We open our minds while staying alert. Lyra nodded slowly. Like battle meditation. Yes, we have similar practices in our ancient texts. She adjusted her robes and gracefully sat on the floor. Show me. James sat across from her, close enough to touch, but not so close as to crowd. Offer me your hand, and I'll guide you through it. She extended her delicate blue hand, and James gently took it. Her skin was cool to the touch, and he could feel a slight tingling where they connected. Focus on my breathing, he said softly. Match it. In human meditation, we say the breath is the bridge between body and mind. The living crystals around them dimmed slightly, responding to the changing mood in the room. For several minutes, they simply breathed together, their rhythms slowly synchronizing. I can feel your strength, Lyra whispered, her patterns flowing like calm water. But it's not just physical. There's something more. That's discipline, James replied quietly. The power to choose peace over violence, to use strength to protect rather than dominate. Hours passed like this, in shared meditation and quiet conversation. Through their connected hands, Lyra experienced the controlled power of humanity, while James sensed the ancient wisdom of her people. As the station's night cycle drew to a close, the princess finally spoke again. You were right, Commander. This was better than sleep sharing. My people have forgotten that true understanding comes from choice, not circumstance. James carefully released her hand. And what have you decided about humans? Lyra's patterns glowed with a clear, steady light. I've decided that the Empire has much to learn from Earth, and much to offer in return. She stood gracefully. The council meets in 3 hours. I believe I have an interesting report to give them. Looking at her serene expression, James knew that somehow they'd managed to turn a potential diplomatic disaster into something revolutionary. The real question was, what would happen next? 3 months after the meditation night, James stood in his favorite spot on the observation deck, watching ships come and go. But now he wasn't alone. The council approved the final draft of the Alliance Treaty, Lyra said, her tall frame casting a long shadow in the starlight. Earth is now officially a senior partner in the Stellar Empire's defense network. James nodded, noting how her patterns flowed with calm confidence these days. And your opponents in the royal court? Surprisingly quiet, she replied with a slight smile. It's hard to argue against success. The new Human Empire Cultural Exchange Program has already produced remarkable results. She wasn't exaggerating. In the weeks following their shared meditation, everything had changed. The station now hosted regular meditation sessions between humans and Empire citizens. Empire scientists were studying human physical training methods, while Earth's researchers excitedly explored Empire technology. The combined training program was particularly inspired, James commented. Your people teaching us mental disciplines while we help them rediscover their physical capabilities. Yes, watching Empire nobles attempt push-ups has been entertaining. Lyra's patterns flickered with amusement, though not as entertaining as watching humans try to use our telepathic crystals. A comfortable silence fell between them as they watched a group of Empire youth practicing Earth-style calisthenics in the station's gym through the observation window. Their movements were awkward but determined. My father, the Emperor, has taken a personal interest in the project. Lyra continued. He's commissioned the construction of specialized training facilities across Empire space, places where our peoples can learn from each other. And the sleep-sharing tradition. Modified, thanks to you. Her patterns shifted to thoughtful blues. We've learned that true trust doesn't come from ritual, but from mutual respect and understanding. The meditation protocol you created is now standard diplomatic practice. James turned to face her fully. You planned this all along, didn't you? The whole sleep-sharing demand. It was a calculated risk to force both sides to confront their preconceptions. Perhaps, she admitted, her silver eyes twinkling. Or perhaps I simply wanted to understand the fascinating human who treated me like a person, not just a princess. She paused. The Emperor has asked me to oversee the expansion of the exchange program. I'll need an experienced advisor. Are you offering me a job, Your Highness? I'm offering you a chance to continue what we started. Her patterns swirled with possibility. There are still those who fear humanity's strength, who don't understand how power and peace can coexist. They need to see what I saw that night. The discipline behind the force, the wisdom behind the warrior. A ship from Earth docked at the station, carrying the next group of exchange participants. Among them would be soldiers, scientists, artists, all ready to learn and teach. Besides, Lyra added softly, I've grown accustomed to our meditation sessions. James smiled. What had started as a diplomatic crisis had evolved into something neither of them had expected. A true bridge between their peoples, built on mutual respect and understanding. I'll need to consult with Earth Command, he said, mostly for form's sake. They both knew he'd accept. Of course. Lyra's patterns danced with what he now recognized as happiness. In the meantime, shall we observe tonight's training session? I believe they're attempting something called yoga today. As they walked together toward the training area, James reflected on how much had changed. The princess who had once demanded he sleep beside her had become a partner in building a new future. Humanity had gained powerful allies. The Empire had begun to rediscover its strength, and somewhere in between, two very different beings had found common ground. You never did tell me, he said as they walked, what you sensed about me that night during meditation. Lyra's patterns shifted to colors he'd never seen before. I sensed hope, Commander. Hope for both our peoples. She gestured to the gathered humans and Empire citizens ahead. And looking at this, I'd say that hope was well placed. James couldn't argue with that. In the end, it hadn't taken sleep-sharing or complex rituals to bridge their differences. Just trust, respect, and the willingness to try something new. Sometimes, he reflected, the best diplomatic solutions were the simplest ones.